I'm actually wondering when you do all that stuff, because when we played together that quartet tour, it seemed like, because the band didn't record a record before,
Hmm.
and also the band hadn't played that much before. It seemed like you just sped out like a perfect repertoire of like a lot of pieces you've sent to me. It
Hmm.
was almost like 20 pieces or something. And I was wondering how through all that madness of all these
Yeah.
gigs, um, how do you find the time to compose these tunes?
You just have to focus when you have a chance, you
Mm.
know. And of course, whenever I seek to put together a new band, I'm always thinking about, exactly who's going to be in it and what I want the focus to be.
Yeah,
And sometimes that involves writing a bunch of stuff. I mean, to be honest, I wasn't exactly sure what the focus of that band would exactly be. So I wrote a ton of stuff, and
I
was kind
see.
of, well, this is what works in this way, and this works in a different way, you
Hmm.
know. But I always find that if you keep the faucet running, at least you'll have something to work with, because it doesn't always really take that much, to turn into something. But you need some kind of concept, you need some kind of mood, you need something. And then oftentimes, as I bring things in and I realize how they are, I'll realize what's unfinished about it.
Yeah,
Like when I actually hear it performed, or I'll hear what can be added or what it needs, or
right.
maybe it has too much, and
Hmm.
you take something away. Um, but you kind of have to go with the process, and when you go out with a particular band, it may be different. You might make different choices with a different band. If
Hmm.
it was a different drummer, you might go, oh well, actually, maybe we should go in this direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it really isn't something you can completely plan ahead of time, which is nice.
yeah. It reminded me, a little bit about the great comedians who like turn up their repertoire after once they played it for a while with the band, and then
Right.
not with the band obviously,
Yeah.
but for a tour, and then
Right.
they completely say, okay, that's done,
That's it. That stuff's gone. Yeah.
and now I have to rethink my whole thing and just come up with something new. And
Right.
we always, in a way, rewrite the same tunes.
Right. Right.
It's
Right.
it's
It's a style. I
I
mean,
think
you.
I heard Schofield say that. Like, actually, I only have written like four tunes, and in a way, these four
Funny.
tunes, they're different.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
you
And,
know,
right. And those are the archetypes for a lot of his work. Yeah.
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 I always see it as like a photograph of me in front of something different. This is me in front of the Eiffel Tower.
Right. Right.
This is me in
Right.
India,
Yeah.
because it's always like a personal, yeah, like a new chapter in the diary. Then still you, and you've made some
Right.
new. But I
Yeah.
found it that very, very inspiring to see,
Yeah.
to
Well,
to see
thanks.
how much stuff you came up.
Well, and I mean, I've kind of tried to keep this insistence on like basically keeping the underground book with underground, keeping the band,
Sure.
keeping them separate, you know,
Yeah.
so that this band has this repertoire, this band has, but it means a lot of tunes. It
Yeah.
just means you have to, and
And also it takes, I think, from me seeing it from the outside, I suppose it takes courage to lose the old material, because you've written
yeah,
so many
exactly.
great tunes that are in a way
That
also
works.
classics. When
Yeah,
I talk
something
to my
that works.
friends about gratitude, or
Yeah,
um, traveling mercies, there's so many, and all the records before that too. I mean, there's so many great tunes where you could play them, like Watermelon Man or
yeah,
something. Like
right,
Herbie
right.
still plays these songs.
Yeah.
You could
Well,
still
maybe
play them.
I mean, I'm starting to think about that. I mean, maybe in the future it would be smart, even just musically, just to go back and do that a bit more. I don't know
Mm,
how, when, you know. Except that, of course, I keep writing new tunes.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I also do like those old tunes, and I kind of go, "Wow, it's a shame, like that never gets played." And
yeah,
there's a bunch of people that are never going to hear it because they just never checked it out the first time. And,
yeah.
you know, um,
This is where I
and
come into play. I always ask you to play all, my
right, right.
teenage
Chris, would you
love
please
tunes.
play Watermelon Man,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah. Also, in terms of composing, I think in the early days, at least it sounds to me like Dave Holland had a sort of an impact on your writing.
Hmm.
Would you say that's true?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting if you know if you go back and listen to there's a record I think it was maybe 1996, 97 with Dave, and it was the first time I ever actually played with Dave. It was with Schofield and Dave and
Oh
Jack.
man,
Yeah.
yeah, I love
Um,
that.
and and that was before I ever worked with Dave. I mean, I listened to the records, but I had never really worked with him. Um, but I think some of the tunes already, kind of had a little bit of a similar focus, just because I kind of like the same thing. I found that some of the tunes had this kind of odd meter vampy thing,
Yeah,
where maybe there was a figure that repeated that you could get loose from.
yeah,
No, but the fact that it was a repeated thing, meant that there was some kind of continuity, and even maybe in a big sense, almost like a drone, like a feeling of stasis
yeah.
with a lot of rhythmic activity there as well.
Mm,
Maybe a shorter cycle, a shorter rhythmic and harmonic cycle.
yeah,
A tune like 7-Eleven
yeah,
or something, um, which kind of fit in with Dave's thing. And as soon as I started working with Dave's band, I mean, of course, you can't help but be
yeah,
influenced by the music around you, and just kind of seeing how he put it together.
yeah.
Um, and also Robin's writing too, and
Mm,
everyone's writing for the group. You know,
right.
uh, we also played that music a lot. We went on the road
Yeah,
and we played a lot,
yeah,
and that's a nice thing, as you obviously know about, having a band that has some history,
mm,
is that you start kind of adjusting how you play in a certain way to the situation, and changing how you play because of how they're playing, and then they do the same thing, and it becomes this kind of band language that you don't really, again, it's not the kind of thing you can plan ahead of time.
yeah,
uh, you can try to throw together people that'll work together, and that'll happen,
yeah,
you know. But you don't really know how everybody's going to affect everyone else.
yeah,
But I'm sure with that band, just because of the volumes of gigs that we did, and because everyone's at such a high level, obviously, and
yeah,
and the music was interesting to us, I'm sure the influences just kind of kept on going. I know I mean, I'll definitely say it's the case for me.
mm,
Is I'm sure that had a bigger influence than I can even clearly see, just because I was in the middle of it.
yeah.
You know.
How would you say, because you've played with Paul Motion so early on in your career, how
Hmm.
would you say he changed your playing? Because always when I listen to you play with him, you sound a little bit different, you know?
Yeah. Well, he has such a different approach to music, which was very, very liberating for me,
Mm,
and also a big challenge. And I still think about him a lot. I really did learn a lot from him in terms of, I'm not exactly sure how to put it, but kind of the courage to not, hold on to anything that you know. He made that into a kind of a defiant theme. Was, hey, I'm going to try and approach the drums like I've never seen a set of drums before.
yeah,
And of course, he always sounded like him. I mean, it was clearly a stylistic thing. And the only reason that he was able to get away with that was because he actually could play the drums. I mean, someone who can't play and doesn't have
you can
that.
start with that.
No, you can't start with that. I mean, like the depth of experience and the amount of attention. I mean, the folks that he would always talk about would be Kenny Clark and
Mm,
Art Blakey, and Sid Catlett and all these
mm,
guys. I mean, he was thinking very much about that era of drummer, especially guys that he looked up to when he first got to New York, like the kind of first generation bebop cast, because he kind of came up right after that,
mm,
you know. But he obviously made a conscious decision even to really change how he approached things. And of course, this was, you know, I mean, it's pretty clear to hear this change if you listen to the recordings too. If you listen to how he was playing with Scott LaFaro and Bill Evans, it's very unique.
yeah,
But it's within a kind of a more tame language in a certain way. And then by the time like there's that Paul Bley record with John Gilmore
Yeah.
and Gary Peacock, it sounds like the Paul that I played with a bit more,
Yeah.
where it was just kind of all the edges were a little rougher, you
Yeah.
know. But I think he kind of had a way of insisting that he was going to respond to things on an aesthetic kind of gut level,
Mm.
where he wasn't going to analyze. He was just going to go with what he thought sounded good, you know.
Mm.
And sometimes I think he was even so contrary that he went too far in that direction too, where he like something that clearly made sense to do is what he wouldn't do, you
Yeah.
know. Um, but in the end, you had to appreciate that too, that just that chutzpah, and he got away with it because he was so musical,
Hmm.
you know. Um, there is a story that I often tell, about how when I was first working with him, and I did this tour, and I basically quit Steely Dan to go on the road with him, and I
Yeah.
was, like thinking, what am I doing?
Hmm.
I've just thrown away a big career thing, but I want to play jazz anyway, and
Yeah.
this is what I want to do. And then for the first few nights, I didn't like. He wasn't really responding. He was just kind of playing, but not with a bunch of energy, and just
Hmm.
just wasn't giving it up, And I think I responded by kind of getting more and more agitated, more and more rhythmic, thinking, man, okay, this is something that a lot of drummers, you you throw stuff out and
Yeah.
they it bounces back, and it just was not working at all, you
Mm.
know. And then after a few days, I got to the point, and I was kind of feeling. Like, man, what am I doing wrong? I wish he'd play with me. This is not, this
Yeah.
is not how I was having him go. After a few days of that, I got to the point where I was like, man, screw him. I don't care. Like this sounds terrible. Like I don't know what he's doing. But screw it. I'm just gonna play. And from moment one, he started playing with me.
Amazing.
And the lesson, and I can't imagine it was conscious on his part. Maybe it was. But I think, as soon as he felt that I wasn't looking for any kind of approval and I was just going to go ahead and do what I did,
Yeah.
then he started playing,
Yeah.
And I mean, that's one of the best lessons I ever got.
Yeah.
Again, without a word being spoken, like most great lessons,
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
it was really a, change in my thinking. And I think I also grew to appreciate how, again, his sense of aesthetics was in general not necessarily to go with what you were doing and do something similar.
Mm.
You know, if you were playing a big pile of notes, he might play less because of that, because
Yeah.
he's thinking of the kind of the overall shape
The
and
balance. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, and that the way he would respond wasn't often that direct. It was more kind of an oblique way of responding. You could feel it. You could feel that he was present and he was, reacting to what was going on around him.
Mm.
But it was hardly ever in a way where if you went don't, he'd go don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's definitely someone I think about a lot when I think about
Yeah.
kind of my values in music.
Hmm.
And partially because his personality was so different than mine, but
Yeah.
it's really kind of a good thing to keep in mind for me.
Hmm. I think, and maybe I'm interpreting too much into it, but I think the neoclassicism movement of jazz was in full steam when Paul
Hmm.
Motion decided to form the Electric Bebop Band.
Yeah, that's kind of.
And do you think he was kind of making a statement in terms of taking that old repertoire that everybody was, holding up in that time,
Right.
but doing something really new with it, also in terms of instrumentation and also in the way he handled that material?
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I wasn't there at the very first iteration of it. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a record with Josh, and I think there were gigs before that where there was no saxophone player at all.
Hmm.
I forget who was telling me this. Maybe it was Brad Shepik. I think he might have been there at the very beginning.
Hmm.
That his original idea was to really get players who knew nothing about bebop,
Yeah.
like really like some punk guys or some rock guys, and have it be just completely something else,
Mm.
But doing that repertoire, that was his original idea. And I think he got together with some folks, and then he quickly realized, like, oh yeah, well,
Maybe not.
yeah, they can't play
Yeah,
it. Not capable of playing it.
yeah,
Maybe there is a certain level of comfort with the language, that you need to have to be able to
yeah,
even just play those tunes because they're so challenging in a certain way, you know.
yes,
Um, so I think he did come around and come, a bit back into the jazz fold, but I think that says something about what his original idea was. Yeah, I
mm,
think it was completely like, let's not treat this as a museum piece, but
yeah,
rather as the subversive music that it was,
yeah, totally.
Um, yeah, I think that was in his mind. Yeah,
Mm,
I
okay.
do.
When I was playing with you in your band, I had a um, your view as a band leader um, after a while unfolded to me,
Hmm.
and it's something you talked about before with your band leaders. I think not with your band, but about your band leaders before.
Yeah,
You didn't give a ton of direction,
no.
but you led me through example in a way because you didn't say much about how I should play your pieces. Um, but when it came to playing the pieces, either in the short rehearsals we had or in the gig, you played the at least that what was I was interpreting into it.
Hmm. Hmm.
You played so many embellishments of the melody, like not playing it exactly how it's written,
Right,
and
right.
that I took that as an encouragement to treat the music with openness and
Right.
in the moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
as opposed to having it the same every time and getting it completely right on like on the page.
Right. Right.
Um, so that's what I got out of it, and I think
Hmm.
that's how you were treated also by your band leaders, most of them, right?
Yeah. 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 I mean, maybe, certain specific events that have to happen here, and it's, you just say, okay, when we do this, when you finish this section, then go to the interlude and play that, but
Sure.
it's not like a big thing, like, okay, so if you play the ride cymbal on beat three, like I'm, you know, very, very rarely, maybe there's a kind of a more through composed piece that I might ask for specific things like that,
Yeah.
Um, but I usually treat those kind of moments as a certain moment in the set where maybe there is some through composed stuff in the middle of some much freer stuff,
Yeah.
to provide some balance. Um, but in general, yeah, I mean, I try and treat my own music as if it's someone else's music that I'm reading and trying to interpret, and maybe can be improved or
Yeah.
not necessarily improved or but just felt in the moment, and
Yeah.
then and that it has enough flexibility for that to happen, and part of the challenge is writing that way and
Hmm.
thinking that way, you know, um, the balance between being specific and not, I mean, I think about John Coltrane's writing or Sonny Rollins' writing.
Mm.
These are two major voices on the horn that have also been very, very major voices in terms of their tunes.
Yeah.
You um, but in general, the tunes are very simple, and especially like, I mean, if you look at Coltrane's, work, I mean, they were more specific at the beginning, clearly, and
Hmm.
got to a high level of specificity with giant steps,
Hmm.
and then kind of broke down again into where he was. I mean, I'm sure you've seen maybe that picture of his sketches for the entire album of A Love
Yeah.
Supreme
Yeah.
on basically one piece of score paper.
Yeah. Amazing.
The whole record is on that,
Yeah.
and it has this compositional unity to it and this focus. I mean, it's all again fairly simple written material.
Yeah.
Um, but I think he just got to a point where it's like, well, this is what I need to get to this, and any more than this is going to be too much,
Yeah.
for what I'm trying to say and what we're trying to get to.
Mm.
I mean, that's another way to look at it, I think, than the basic idea of, okay, I'm going to write a tune,
Yeah.
and which involves, okay, we're going to do it this certain way. And I mean, there's a certain thing that I encounter too, um, partially with, you know, the way that a lot of people are writing music today, and the way that I write my music down too, is in the computer, like
True.
through a computer program, so that it's easy to print out and it looks nicer and it's, you know,
Listen
easy
back
to
to. You can listen back to it.
yeah, right. Um, but you don't work in exactly the same way, or you have to consciously make yourself think in that same way if you're going to do it. That, you know, there really is something nice about just a little sketch,
Yeah.
you know.
You treat it differently when you see it, right? Because it
Yeah,
seems unfinished.
right, right. It seems like maybe, okay, this is something to work with, rather than, you know, it looks, if it looks professionally printed out, it's like, okay, that's, you know, I mean, there's all these little things that do affect, you know, how a musician's going to play it.
Mm.
And I keep thinking, boy, I would really like to go back and just, you know, write things out by hand.
Yeah.
And then I get about 4 bars into it, and it's such a pain in the neck
Yeah.
that I go back to the computer, I have to admit.
Yeah.
But I do make an effort at least to treat it like I used to, you
Yeah.
know.
This is why, your tunes are very inviting, because although it looks perfectly written down through the computer, there isn't a ton of notes in there. Although,
Right.
it's challenging and inviting at the same time.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. I mean, that's always the thing, is like the right level of challenge to make it into something that, you know, isn't exactly like what you've done before, or that you know, make yourself a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah.
quite sure what it should be,
Hmm.
you know, um, but not like locked into a straitjacket,
Yeah.
which is actually another form of safety, you know,
Hmm. True.
you know, you know. I mean, it's all about getting to that point when you're actually performing it, where you really are feeling it as something new that's happening right at that moment, and you have to get into yourself in a deep way in order to, you know, reach something and communicate that, you
Hmm.
know. And that can be done, of course. That can be done. I mean, you know, somebody playing a whatever, you know, a Beethoven concerto can get into that frame of mind too, and it's extremely specific. But in the jazz context, I mean, there is something for me about, you know, not just playing exactly what's written,
Yeah.
that helps you get there, you
Yeah.
know. And if you don't get there, it's not the fault of the written music. It's just, you know, that maybe you couldn't find it that night.
Mm.
You know.
Another thing that I'm always amazed by when I listen to you play, or when we played, I notice it even more. It seems to me like you have an especially fast and deep connection from your ear to your brain to your instrument.
Hmm.
And I wonder how you attained that and how you work at that.
Hmm. Um, well, thanks. I don't know. I mean, there are certain ways that I tend to practice things, which maybe are a reflection of how my brain tends to work anyway. Um, but that is the goal for me, is to go from what I'm hearing into this big metal tube, you know, with as few things in the way as possible. I do not have like a perfect sense of pitch. It's relative, you know, and there's a big thing for me about just whatever I want to work on. I try and make sure I know it in every key up and down the horn,
Hmm.
which is something like on the piano. You know, you can kind of visually see the pattern that
True.
that you're working with in a way that you really can't on the saxophone. So it's a bit less easy, I think, to get that comfort, because you can't really see it or feel it in your fingers even as a geometric shape, you
But I
know.
suppose you coming from the piano, it helped you a lot,
I'm sure that does help, right? Yeah, well, yeah,
because
actually
what
probably
you
does.
in a way you sound pianistic on the horn,
Hmm.
you know.
Maybe that is. I mean, maybe that is part of the thing. Is maybe I do think of it as geometric in a certain way, and then I've just tried to practice enough on the saxophone to get it to where I'm fast enough to, you know, to translate that.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Um, because that is a big way that I practice, is, you know, um, is not really having much written material or nothing to look at,
Yeah.
but just finding some kind of idea, some kind of cell of an idea, and then working with it, um, in different ways. You
Mm.
know, definitely through the keys, also maybe backwards,
Yeah.
you know, thinking of each idea um, in terms of a set of pitches that can be rearranged in a different order, you know, um, that can be used where each note is like hitting a drum, using it as a rhythmic sequence. But if it's a sequence of 5 notes, then maybe that means there's 5 drums, kind of, you know what I
Uh-huh.
mean?
Yeah.
Um, just working with material in that way. I think that's my way of trying to get to that, you know. And I mean, probably more than I even realize. A lot of it comes from listening to other music
Yeah.
and getting that in your you know in your ear and trying to you know figure out what that feels like on the horn. Just hours and hours of Charlie Parker, obviously. You know, just
Yeah.
things where you just know what sounds right because you've done it. You know, it's not like some kind of theoretical language. It's like phrasing and things that come from something that seems like it's grounded in melody, rhythm. It's hard to explain, but something that somehow connects it to the blues, whatever the blues
Mm-hmm.
is, and which isn't even doesn't blues doesn't even have to be an American thing,
Yeah.
but just this connection to music that seems like it's you know coming from the earth in some way. I don't know
Yeah.
how else to say it.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Beautiful. Because sometimes, that when I saw you play over the chords I had written down or you had written down,
Yeah.
I could see you or feel you going like, huh, what if I do this? And or how about to do this? And then you did it, right? I could feel
Right.
you
Yeah. Yeah.
hearing it before and then going for it. And it was
Yeah.
very amazing to see. Also, when you played some of my tunes for the first time, I could see you work through the changes. It was
Right.
really, really inspiring
Yeah.
to. Maybe you can also maybe talk about that. How you,
Yeah.
when you see like a sheet for the first time, how do you
Mm-hmm.
approach it? Because you're so fast. All the rehearsals we had were super fast, and you were, I think I'm good. I think I'm good. And you were.
well, eh, it depends on the. I mean, some of it is because the music you write makes sense.
Mhm.
you know, I mean, sometimes you're looking at music and you're going, man, how am I going to make anything out of this? But if it feels like it has a flow to it and it has a logic within it, it's a lot easier to just
Right.
you know. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a certain way of you know, looking at a series of chords and then having done it enough, you kind of know what that's going to sound like before you start playing it, or you see the relationships, in a fast way. You see, okay, yeah, so the major seventh of this chord is about to turn into the minor third of this other one,
Yeah.
and I can kind of use that, just stuff like that. That
Yeah.
that from seeing it and then hearing it, because I can also hear, okay, yeah, okay, G, which is the major seventh of A flat major seventh, is now the third of E minor.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can hear that, and I can maybe play some melody that sounds like it's a melody that uses that idea. You know,
Hmm.
so it's a bunch of that kind of thinking, and then some of it is a bit more like, wow, okay, I'm not quite hearing it, so let me follow what the blueprint is and just
Hmm.
see, and just play a shape that I think is going to be pleasing, even if I'm not quite, used to harmonically what's about to happen. And there's also a lot about phrasing, about looking at the tune and trying to figure out how it makes sense. Not, I mean, the way that we read a chord progression, just because of how it has to be, is that it's okay. It's this chord, then it's this chord, then it's this chord, and this chord. But that isn't really the way that you want it to sound. A
Mm.
lot, you want it to sound like there's a line, it's a river, So you have to kind of know how to interpret these markers. It's like it's some sort of a marker along the shore of the river saying, okay, it's this here and this, and then connect those in a way that it's flowing, which means thinking of chords in terms of maybe the lines that they imply, you
Yeah.
know. You know, that yes, okay, so yeah, this major seventh turns into this minor third, and then on the next chord, if you go up a major second, it's going to be this other thing of this next chord, and you know, and that's the thread that's like this. You know, it involves trying to look at music and quickly figure that out.
Yeah.
You know, simply paying attention to the harmonic rhythm too, and looking at where the spots are where it tends to resolve.
Hmm.
You know. Um, can give you a big help in terms of how you want to phrase something,
Mm.
you know, just seeing how it's constructed rather than again just this, you know, but thinking, okay, so a chorus is this long and this is, you know, 7 bars and then there's a bar of 2/4. So there's something going on that, you know, makes that why it's written that way, and maybe I can use that. You know, where you might even play wrong notes, but if it musically kind of makes sense with the flow of the tune,
Yeah, you're more playing the tune.
yeah,
You're honoring the tune more, and that therefore
right,
you're more in the music as
right,
opposed to playing the chord that you're supposed to play in that particular moment, and then the next chord
right,
you somewhat don't get the full picture of the tune.
right, right.
Yeah.
But it does take a, you know, a certain amount of understanding of the building blocks
Hmm.
to do that. If you don't have the understanding of the building blocks, you can't. You know, it's much harder to get to that level
Mm.
to see what the continuity is. You
Can
know.
you tell me a couple of guys that you saw this when you were coming up have this this particular gift or knowledge,
Hmm.
where you said like, oh wow, I want to have that too, or maybe you
Hmm.
had it all the way through, I don't know, but maybe you saw it in someone and that sparked something.
Yeah, I mean the musician that immediately comes to mind as just, you know, unbelievably advanced at this is Herbie. You know,
Yeah.
which is no surprise, but just, you know, being in situations watching him read a set of chords, which I've had a chance to do just a little bit, you know, or work on something that's unfamiliar to him.
Hmm.
Um, it seems that the analysis process is so I don't even know how to say it, but it's such a fluid thing,
Yeah.
and it's everything is so changeable. You
Hmm.
know, there's a world within F major seven that may or may not involve any of the notes that are in F major seven, but somehow, you know, the way he plays through it, he
Yeah.
understands function, he understands what's going on,
Yeah.
and he just and he kind of has the courage, and it's also, I mean, besides the courage, it's also just the playfulness
Right.
to go, okay, you know,
Hmm.
and and the trust in his own instincts, you know, after doing
Mm.
it for so long. Um, for me, that's the obvious person that I look at, and I go, oh yeah, okay, that's that idea taken to such a high level that I can't even imagine anyone taking it further.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting now that I work with Lionel, you
Hmm.
know, a fair amount. I feel like Lionel has internalized some of this
Oh yeah.
in
Okay.
a way that I've never heard really anyone on the guitar do. I mean,
Right.
he has such a unique kind of way of playing the guitar. Anyway, this,
That's true.
you know, this. I mean, just his background alone. I mean, it's he's a very unusual musician.
Yeah. Did you talk to Herbie or Lionel about like understanding the function? Because I also think that's what Herbie does when he exchanges chords. He
Yeah,
doesn't really go like, well, I want to play another chord. Maybe how about this? I think he understands the function of the chord, and that gives him
yeah,
tons of other possibilities to address that function without having to play the actual chord.
yeah. I think that's true because it's not like it's just unrelated
No.
at all. Like things, you know, you can hear resolution points.
Yeah.
You know, it's just that maybe on the F major seven, maybe he resolves to an A major seven. You
Yeah.
know, um, but because of the logic of the line and the melody and the way he does it, you know, you hear it as a going away and coming back, and you're back to a tonic, except that it's you know, it's up in the air.
Yeah.
It's a major third above what that is. But I haven't ever really spoken to either of them about it. I don't know
Mm.
that they would even have much insight in terms of explaining it. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
they would. I don't know. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, I mean, it is an intellectual process on a certain level, but it's also just an ear and
Gut level.
gut level. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Because it doesn't seem, you know. Uh, I remember being in an airport, and I think I was looking at some Messiaen score or something like that. You know, and Herbie was kind of like, "Oh man, yeah, I used to look at that, like, 30 something, I mean,
Yeah.
when he was in his early 20s, and I almost got the feeling that he was like, man, Chris, you don't need to do that. Just
Ah, yeah. Okay.
go with what you do. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
That was kind of the feeling I got, whether that's what he meant or not. But
Mm-hmm.
that was the vibe. Like, man, why are you even bothering with that? you know,
That's cool.
help
Hmm.
me.
Yeah. I mean, we all as musicians, most of us, or I think all of us, to a certain extent, have moments of self-doubt and like differently long periods of being very, very self-critical,
hmm
and also
hmm
thinking like I can't play, or I can't play how I used to play, right?
hmm
I'm not good enough, and I'm wondering to what extent you had those moments and how you got out of those moments, if you had them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that's a bit of a curse, I guess, that comes with the blessing,
Hmm.
of having this idea that you want to be an artist and you want to make something at a high level that expresses, some inner thing that you feel and experience. I mean, I would say it's an inner truth, but it doesn't even. It's just it's how it feels.
Hmm.
It's to be human and a way to communicate that. And and the curse part is that you can never do it well enough. You can never get to that point where it's like, yeah, okay, I just said it and that's it. Because it's all part of a process that keeps going. And yeah, it's a big thing to fight against because without any self doubt, you get Donald Trump.
Yeah,
like
it's
you
true.
get there's just no depth and there's no actual going. Wait a minute, okay, is that a real answer to the question? Is that how I really, like without any moment where you're going, is that what I really think, or is that really true, or is that really good enough? Then
Hmm.
you're not going to get to that next level.
Yeah.
You know. On the other hand, if you do it too much, it's a crippling thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it means that you can't go anywhere, and you don't have the power to communicate anything.
Hmm.
You know. Um, I mean, I think it's true what a lot of musicians have said. I think Charlie Parker said this. I've heard a lot of people. The idea is that you practice and you practice and you practice and you practice, and then when you're actually playing, you just put it all out the window,
Yeah.
like completely.
Mm.
And whatever that voice is that when you were practicing, you had to go no, going from that note to it's not quite legato enough, or it's too much this, or no, the sound is not right.
Mm.
Those kind of necessary diagnostic moments that you have to go, yeah, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
Let me try it again. You really have to turn that off. I mean, completely off, and go on instinct. And that's easier said than done. And it's an important kind of life lesson too. You
Mm.
know, because you kind of have to live that way too in a certain way. Nobody knows what the best decision is ahead of time in so many parts of life. You make these decisions that you have no idea really what the ramifications are going to be years down the line, but
True.
you have to do it. You
Yeah.
just have to go ahead and do it. Um, and hopefully all the things that you've thought about and have practiced, and just the process of going through it means that when it is that kind of crunch time and the decision is made before you even know it, because that's, especially in jazz improvisation, that's how much time you have, is
Hmm.
zero. you know um, that all of these things that have been going on in your mind will just come out, and maybe come out in a way that even surprises you, and maybe you don't even understand,
Mm.
you know, which again opens up kind of a path to, self-discovery, which is an amazing thing, so there is a skill involved in that,
Mm.
I think, that you can get better at. That's another thing you can practice.
Hmm.
In other words, is the turning off of the critical
Yeah.
faculties when it's not helpful.
One of my teachers said to me, don't interfere, even when it's good. Don't go like,
Yeah.
wow, this is great.
Oh yeah. No, that's a big no-no. Like,
Yeah.
wow, this is great. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Just the judging part of it takes you out of the moment, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody was saying there was this guy. I'm not sure how far he's gotten with this, but he was putting jazz musicians in a what's it called, a CAT scan, something,
Ah.
to monitor what's going on in their brain, and I mean, it's obviously not the best musical environment, like somebody lying down in a CAT scan playing on a little keyboard and trying to improvise something.
That's how it feels sometimes.
Right, totally. But there was something that he ended up talking about, which I thought was kind of interesting, was that there were similarities to like someone who's very good at going into a meditation state,
Mm.
you know, um, which involves also turning off this critical faculty kind of overseeing thing that tends to judge. That there were certain areas of the brain that were active,
Yeah.
and then certain areas that were kind of inhibited, that were not active.
Yeah.
And that the watching a brain involved in jazz improvisation was a little bit like watching someone meditate, but with the motor part still on.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's beautiful.
which is exactly what it feels like when
Hmm.
it's working. Um, so I think there is something to that. I mean, and you can analyze it in any kind of way, a scientific way, a feeling way, a
Hmm.
spiritual way, whatever angle you want to take. But
Yeah.
I think it has something to do with that. It has to do with getting to that state where there's just no room to say, yeah, this isn't good enough, or I'm not good enough, or I wish I was better than.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's true. Maybe, yeah, of course, we all wish we were better.
Yeah.
But you have to turn it off, you know,
Mm.
at least during that moment. And
Yeah.
if you turn it off all the time, you'd probably be happier and actually get further anyway. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Also
so
takes courage. Yeah.
yeah, and getting to a certain level
Hmm.
too, where you kind of go, yeah, I mean, yes, I need to practice, and there's a lot more to learn, and there's things that I want to introduce into my playing that aren't there, and I just want to keep that moving. On
Mm.
the other hand, I know enough already to say a lot more than I've already said.
Yeah.
So let me go with that and just, let that be what it is. I mean, if you think about it, Charlie Parker, I mean, some of these recordings he had made by the time he was 24, 25, it's like you could spend a lifetime and never get to that, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.